Hey guys, welcome back. And as always, just thank you for sharing your time. Thank you for sharing your space. And thank you for just showing up here this week. This week, I wanted to talk about something that's not found in a very specific story. It's not really found in a cultural trigger. It's just something that's very real to most of our stories. Um, Simply said, I want to talk about what it means to live a quote unquote spiritual life and what it means to move it from an intellectual belief into an experiential knowing, and how important that is to get it out of our head and into our world. Um, I think that some ground rules need to be established. I think it's important to acknowledge and respect that a spiritual purpose or the what that looks like varies dramatically throughout this human experience. It varies dramatically through our different theologies and our different religious teachings, as well as our different cultures have different ideals that are important to uphold. And even within those, though, there's very differences that exist between the individuals. My spiritual purpose may look very different than somebody else's spiritual purpose. And although a lot of us overlay and we have a lot of similarities, like compassion, healing, acceptance, forgiveness, liberation, although those themes might coexist between the individuals, which allows us to have camaraderie and allows us to have relationships, meaningful relationships. But on an individual level, you have your own passions, your own limitations, your own excitements, your own skills and capabilities that your spiritual purpose is designed to include and utilize. God knows you and He knows what's going on, and so your purpose is very individualized to you. And I think it's just important to acknowledge and respect that though they look different, a spiritual purpose is a spiritual purpose. A purpose is a purpose as well. So there's that one. Another thing I think that we should frame is what I mean. I guess if we're going to talk specifics, what I mean when I say a spiritual life or a spiritual purpose. Okay. Um, in my understanding, to live a human life is to live a spiritual life. I believe that you are naturally bound to all of the people around us, and I believe that we are in a quote unquote larger play than we can really understand, and that there's more at work than we can really see. And so I think that to be born as a human, you are entered into this spiritual context, which can really say that it's all the systems working together. It's all of the systems working together, and that there is a divine purpose for this existence, and your existence is within the play. It's within the context, and so you hold a divine purpose within this play, or within this experience, or within this expression of God. Okay? On a more individualized level, to have your spiritual life doesn't just consist of your ritualistic or your religious aspects of yourself. Your spiritual life isn't just Sundays. It isn't just meditative practices. It isn't just yoga practices. It isn't just full moon ceremonies. Those might be moments where your spiritual life is really enhanced because that's what you're focusing on. But your spiritual life is your life as the entirety, which means it includes your mind, it includes your emotions, it includes your physical body, it includes your relationships to people, places, relationships to ideas such as power, authority, compassion, forgiveness, how you relate to those ideas. Your spiritual life is your life as a whole. It is your entirety, okay? And so a lot of times what we do is we end up having a segregation where you have your human life and your day-to-days and your monotonies and your things that you need to get done. And then a lot of times we have our spiritual life, which is so liberating and so freeing and what we wish to pursue. And we end up living in a world where we're split, where we have half of, if we're lucky, half of our mind going to the mundane existence of a human, and the other half going and trying to understand what it means to be a creature and a creation of God. And what's beautiful is that as we spiritually mature, the line between those two worlds dissolves. And that's really the point I'm going to talk about with this, is that they are not segregated in a way where how you spend your time separates them. You know, how you spend your time does not negate the fact that what you're doing is spiritually important, which is to say what you're doing echoes out larger than you. It is influencing the entirety. It is influencing the people in the spaces around you just by you being there. Even if you don't view it that way, it is happening, which is also to say, even if you don't recognize or consciously acknowledge that you're living a spiritual life, which is to say you're living in harmony and in connectedness with everything else, even if you don't acknowledge that, it is still existing, okay? And a lot of times we're very apt to and quick to acknowledge that we are living a spiritual life within those systems or those places where that's the purpose of it. You're supposed to feel that way in church. You're supposed to feel that way in meditation or in yoga or in a ritualistic sense. You're supposed to feel that there. And so we don't mind acknowledging it there, because those places are meant to gear you up and get you in and make you feel the spirit inside of you. And so, of course, we're like, heck yes, I'm living a spiritual life. And then, time goes on and it cuts off, and maybe for a little afterglow, you carry it into your day-to-day, but we slip back into monotony. That's just what's up. It happens, it happens. And so what ends up happening as a result of that is that spiritual knowing that you know, that thing that you have faith in, your trust, the bigger plan, your importance, God's love, God's forgiveness, the magic of it all, that turns into an idea that you believe throughout your day-to-day, but you really know it on Sundays because you saw it on Sundays. But I think it's important for us to recognize that you are able to ground that into the rest of your time. You're able to ground that into the rest of your life because it is all spiritual. You're more than welcome. You're encouraged to, when you encounter a hardship, mentally or internally or even externally, you're encouraged to remember that is there, and you can exhibit a spiritual wisdom within this context. Even if that wisdom is love thy neighbor or love thy enemy, you can take that out of just Sunday practice and apply it to everything in front of you. You can make what you intellectually know into what you experientially believe. You can believe it, you can know it, you can trust it. And it goes away, it stops being an idea and it starts being your reality. And we are in this space where it is very important to do that. There are so many people out there who on Sundays understand God's grace. I've seen it. I love going to church just to watch people praise. I love it. It's one of my favorite things, to see people on fire. But if we start with 100 people that feel that on Sundays, by the time Wednesday comes around, there might be 20 people that still are exhibiting that are still bringing that into their day-to-day. There's a story of a man who goes, it's actually a true story, just to be honest. He's a Sufi, and he went and lived up in upstate New York on a Sufi commune for like 15 years, making the houses, making the food, preparing the food, just their own little world, meditating and practicing with little community outreaches here and there to the immediate communities. And after 15 years of being there, his teacher came to him and said, "When are you going to go? Where are you going to go?" And of course the man was confused because he loved it there. And his teacher said, "No, what you've found, you don't keep it up here in the mountains. Don't hide it up here. Go bring it somewhere else. Bring it somewhere else. Bring it with you." And so the man actually ended up to go live in New York City, Manhattan, which is like a complete 180 from the life he was living. But When I met him, he was just demonstrating it so vibrantly. This compassion and this love and this forgiveness and this willingness to help and willingness to show up. And that city and even my life at the moment needed to see that. And so when I say to live a spiritual life, I don't mean to go live in the mountains. I don't mean to spend 18 hours a day in meditation or to go stay in the desert for 40 days or under the Bodhi tree for 40 days, If you feel inspired to do that, knock yourself out. But that's not the point. What I'm trying to say is that to take what you know is true, to take what you know about God and your relationship as it is, and to hold that as true, and then start letting it weed into your day-to-day life, which is just to say, make it conscious. Make it something you think about. Make it something you recognize. Make it a mantra. Make it a purpose. Make it a purpose. Not something you go to visit. Not something you can go indulge in for 45 minutes every week. Make it a process. Make it a aspect of your entire life. Take your entire life and take the part that you siphoned off for spiritual experiences and pull that plug out and let it spill into the rest of your life. Because not only then do you notice that aspects that have been dark are being blessed now because you're bringing God into it, whether that's relationships or personal struggles or limitations or fears, or traumas. And now you say, okay, I'm feeling this trauma, I'm thinking about this trauma, and I'm going to remember that this is within my spiritual life, which means God is here too. And now you have not only your own mental processes, but you have your version of God present. And what's awesome, I say your version of God as a way of saying your concept of God is only going to be so big. God is infinity. You cannot know it all the way. And so whatever your version of God is can be introduced, and God will demonstrate that there is even more there. Okay? That's what I'm trying to say. Is not only is it beneficial for you and for your own personal life to acknowledge consciously that God is present in every aspect of yourself, because it is all within that spiritual context, but by extension, you are now expressing and exuding God into the other worlds outside of yourself, within your relationships, whether that be with someone you love or someone up until now that you can't stand. If you say, okay, God, I have a lot of anger for this person, but that too is within a spiritual context. So God, I know you're here, which means I know there's a purpose to this, which means I'm here to listen. And so you end up in this state where it's all fair game for God to be present in. There's not a space that's cut off. There's not anything that's cut off. You're just there. It's all right there. However, that is experientially knowing that. And that's not something that's just easy to do. It's tricky. It's tricky. Our habits don't include God. Our habits don't include God. Most of our life that we've built up so far doesn't include God. But you have the capacity to start to acknowledge and remember that it is in the spiritual context, that God is present in those things. It's not that he wasn't ever there. It's not that it was never a spiritual experience. It's just that you didn't see it that way. You didn't take the extra steps to remind yourself, oh yes, you're right. This is part of the show. This is part of the game. This is part of the purpose. This is part of the thing. And so my prayer is that we are able to make this bridge and to easily remember this. Because our lives right now are so split. We have so many people talking about religious ideals or moral ideas, and no one's following through on them. There's a book, it's called The Hole in the Gospel, which sounds like it's a jab at Christianity, but really what it's saying is we're believing every part of this book except for the part where it says, now go love them. Now go do it. How did we miss this part? Why is there a hole in this teaching? Now, and I'm not saying go be a missionary. I'm not saying go doing that. But I am saying that by you acknowledging that God is present, you're already being a missionary. You're already sharing it because there'll be a glow about you, or there'll be something about you, whether that's calmness or a natural ease of compassion or a natural listener or forgiveness that you can extend. You'll already be doing the work that most churches try to remind you that you can do, or most practices try to remind you that you have this in you. And by you acknowledging that it is all spiritual, or that you are already in rhythm and in sync with it, you're doing the work now. You're doing the work. You're taking it from here, which is your head, and moving it to here, which is your heart, and by extension, everywhere that heart beats, which is your body, your words, your actions. You're moving it. You're doing the work. I mean, this isn't a test. You're not trying to get the information so when you're at the pearly gates, you can say, yes, and in John 3:16, that's the one we're supposed to remember, right? Like, no, your life is becoming a testimony. Your life becomes a testimony. And I just know enough people out there that already are just rocking the world and so on fire. And then I know people who maybe need a little prodding, but once they open that box up, that box of spiritual beliefs or moral beliefs, or life beliefs, philosophies, once that box is opened, it's just the most magnificent thing to hear. And I just am praying this week that we are able to take it from an intellectual idea into an experiential knowing. Because all of those spiritual truths that you hold, all of the deep wisdoms about why we're here and what we're doing, and how to better love each other and how to better foster a healthy relationship on earth, we need those right now, buddies. Like friends, we need those so much. And it's just so nice to know that you hold that inside of you. You have it. You have it. So it's ready to go. It's just a matter of if you're ready to go. And that's your spiritual journey that leads you to your spiritual purpose. And I'm just grateful to see it when it happens, as it's happening. Even a confusion, even an unsureness is part of that journey. So don't be too hard on yourself. I had to learn that myself. Don't be too hard on yourself, Derek. You're learning. You're remembering. You're waking back up. So yeah, I love you guys very much, and any conversation pieces about this, I would love to dig into. So if I hear from you, beautiful. If not, I will talk to you next week. And I hope this one has nothing but blessings for you guys. Okay? All right. Love you guys. Bye.